There's already 5 people waiting. The fuck do you people not have anything better to do on a Friday evening? Because or whatever time zone you're in, really. Because I certainly don't. So, today, first things first, we're going to get started by removing the light in the camera, because we're not going to need those. Okay, like 3 weeks ago, like a month ago, something like that, I made a first draft of the boss fight for the dungeon I'm working on right now in ZBrush, and I decided, this is just not quite it, so I just spent a little bit of time thinking about what I wanted to do. I talked to ChatGPT about it, because ChatGPT, the moment I install people, they leave, which is fair. There's only 3 people left now. The moment I talked to ChatGPT about it, I started having some ideas, and I mostly just made it generate IDs, to be honest with you. So I had it generate some images for this mood board over here, and it had real issues with me asking something that doesn't have lags, because I don't want to animate lags. Lags are annoying to animate, so I don't want to do that. Also, it feels like for this character, it makes sense that he would be like a floating Grim Reaper. So we're going to ignore everything to do with lags here. And there's quite a few different ones. This is the first one I generated, which I really like, but it's got way too much detail in it for me. And it would rely a lot on cloth sim, which I don't trust Unreal to do with like all this. So close to the actual like character mesh as well. So I'm not going to be doing that. I like this, which I also use as a thumbnail for a reason, right? So I like this style, or something akin to a little bit more like this. Mostly, and this is the important bit, mostly because it doesn't actually like have a full cloak. So we can cloth sim this bit on the left and this bit on the right here, and a little bit of the hood as well, without it having to cloth sim all the way around him as well. And I think that's gonna work out quite well, because this can just animate along with the arm, and then the little like frail things on the edges, those will be simulated. I think that's a good middle ground. So we're gonna go for something like that. But before we do any of that shit, we need to make the ribcage and the spine first. My initial design idea didn't have a ribcage and a spine, because I just wanted to be like a skull and a cloak, but then thinking about it a little bit more, I just ran into so many issues with that. So we're gonna go for a ribcage and a spine, which is gonna take a minute to model. So let's get started on that. I have some ideas as to how I'm going to do this. Let me put my references up on the other monitor here. I need a third monitor for stuff like this, I'm telling you. Maybe one day. So the way we're going to get started with this is we're going to block this out in just normal like poly modeling in Blender. And then as we go along and we start to make this feel a little bit more like natural and organic, we might move over to ZBrush. I might do the actual sculpting in Blender as well. We'll see. I'm not entirely decided on that yet. But for now, we're going to stay in Blender. So the first things first is we're going to start with like the breastbone. And that's just going to be a little something like this. And immediately I will actually put in a subsurf modifier. So sub. I really don't like the fact that Blender 4 I mean, I could just use a skeleton to work off of. You're entirely right. As a base. That would probably be more efficient. Anyway, as I was saying, I don't like the fact that when I add a modifier, like this new menu in Blender 4, I'm not a fan. Then again, it does have a search option, which actually, that one I do like. So let's add some subdivision to this, so that as we model, we can see some more like rounded forms. Now, how are we gonna go about doing this? First, I think the most ideal way would be to also mirror this. So let's mirror this in the X. Yes. And then I think what we want to do is we want to duplicate this and move this geometry to the back and like make it a fair bit longer, because there's going to be the spine as well. This is pretty rough at the moment. What? There we go. I was not selecting faces. And I'll move this up a little bit. And then we're going to have a skull here. The exact proportions we'll stumble upon, I'm sure, at some point. The question is, how many ribs are we going to give this thing? Because an actual human rib cage has like, what is it? Like 20 some ribs? We're not going to do that. Which is also like a big part of the reason that I don't want to use a pre-made asset. Because that seems like a nightmare to change. But it might still be worth doing. So yeah, if we look at these rib cages here, like I've got one over here, that's a pretty good one. First and foremost, we've got like separate bone and cartilage. We're going to just make all of it bone because I can't be asked. And then we've got these bottom ribs as well, which are like weirdly joined together through the cartilage. I don't think I'm going to do that either. So more or less, I think I'm just going to like cut off the ribs here. We're just going to have like 4 ribs on either side. Because that makes my life just a lot easier. And that's kind of the whole reason behind that. If it doesn't look good, we'll add some more, of course, but I think we should be fine. And while we're at it, I'm going to add this to my PureRef so I can actually reference it as I'm working here. So 4 ribs we said, right? So let's subdivide this down. So that's 1. I think this would be 4. I can't move my mouse to count, so I'm going to count with my finger. So that's 1, open 2, open 3. So I need like 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that is what we need. And then we need as many loop cuts on this side as well. But the spine itself is going to need to have... Do we really need to like connect up that geometry? Do we want that? That's a good question. We probably do. But the spine itself is going to have such... Like, it's going to have detail in and of itself with all the little segments we're going to do. So maybe just like having them kind of clip into each other will do fine. Maybe it's a better idea to start with the spine. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea. So the idea here would be that we extrude these out and then just a little less than that probably. And then what we probably want to do is we want to like spin them. So we like spin the ever-living hell out of them. And we just use this menu down here. So we want to spin them at -180 degrees. But we want to spin them in such a way that they end up joining together at the spine. Something a little like that. And then we can move them down and stuff like that, or move them up. I don't know, they move up a little bit. So if we turn on like proportional editing, we only want connected to scale. Increase the influence a fair bit. We're going to have to do a little bit more work on that. I feel like we're going to have to do a fair bit more work on on all of that, because that's not great. But there's also a lot of fine-tuning that we can do. Hold on, if we just go a couple of steps back, and instead of immediately just making all of those the same size, because I think what they're also they should also just be thinner to begin with, right? So if we just start this off as a little bit thinner, and then maybe even inset them ever so slightly, so that we can do this. That might already like do quite a bit there. And hopefully this just now connects up properly. I mean, it doesn't, not even close. But it's easy enough to make them line up. Where's my mirror modifier? The fuck happened to my mirror modifier? There we go. This isn't a lot better, admittedly. But I think this is a place where we can work with something. I know what the issue is. The issue is that they're flat in the wrong direction. They should be flat in the like outward facing normal. So if we, instead of making these thin in the z-axis, we make them thin in the, I don't know, what would that be, like the x-axis or something like that. That looks a lot more like ribs already. Never model the skeleton, okay? We're doing this through trial and error. More so error than trial, but we'll get there eventually. Any chance you could upload the standard boilerplate code you mentioned in Unreal Gaster at some point? Yeah, I could probably like put that in the description. Not right now, but I'm going to try to remember to do that. That is a good point. Yeah. I think I even said it in the video that I would, and then I forgot to do it. I'll try to remember to get to that. Yeah, I don't think that this is the way to do it, but let's see. Might not be half bad actually if we do it like this. Just make them a little wider. This isn't going to be the final model anyway, right? We're going to sculpt a lot on this, which isn't to say that we shouldn't have this look good to begin with, but there certainly is room to like improve things later. But specifically with these ribs, they're so thin that sculpting on them is going to be kind of a nightmare. We'll figure it out, I'm sure. Now, we want all of these to be up a little higher to begin with. So, and the influence for this can be relatively strong. Matter of fact, I think they're actually not that much closer together. I was going to say, I think they're closer together at the back than they are at the front. And to a certain extent they are, but it's not that much. And I also think that this breastbone is just straight up way too fucking huge. I think we are going to need at least like 1 or 2 more ribs, because the thing is that in this rib cage that we have over here, right, as you can see, these ribs kind of curve up, then we have it slowly going into just curving around, and then these start to at some point like at least the cartilage. The ribs themselves just kind of curve around, all of them, but this, they curve down a little bit more first before they curve back up. Maybe we can make that work. Hold on. Maybe if we just say, hey, you curve the fuck down. That does seem like it immediately makes things much better. At which point, I think a reasonable thing to do is start moving this breastbone around a little bit to make things a little less round, because at the moment they're still pretty round. And I actually think that I need a better mouse, because that's the main reason that I want to get a different mouse. There we go. Is because my scroll wheel has been kind of screwy for a while now. We'll touch up that breastbone in a moment, but I think actually having these faces tilted down as well a little bit, maybe actually don't even need to necessarily touch this up too much, to be honest with you. I don't think ribbon particles will really be a stand-in for cloth sim. I'll probably like do a lot of particle stuff with this guy, because I also have this idea that where's PureRef? There we go. PureRef. I also have this idea that he should be like emitting smoke. Not actual smoke. I'm not going to use like fluid dynamics for that, because that would be insane. But if we look at like smoke particles coming from inside the rib cage, maybe around the skull a little bit, I have to look into how reasonable it is to maybe hope to have collision for the smoke on the static mesh, because I feel like that might be a problem. I would very much like the particles to, if not like bounce off and collide and move around the bones, at least like kill themselves when they, that sounds weird, when they hit the mesh itself, but I don't know if that's a thing that I can do. So that might be a bit of an issue. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Right now, that's not important. Let's look at the spine, because I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do the spine. I didn't really think this through too much. Just kind of head first into it, and we'll figure it out as we go, which usually it's good to have a plan. Let's take an image of a spine. I'm gonna so be on a watch list after this. Skeletons, rib cages, spines. I don't want the actual shape of a spine, because if you look at a spine like I have here, like it's got this like double S shape, right? As we probably all like learned in high school, I have to assume. I'm gonna have my spine be mostly just like straight, because it's also like gonna stop about here. So it's mostly going to be just straight. There might be a little bit of curvature to it. The thing that I most care about is those... I don't even know what you call them. But those little extra bits sticking out. I honestly think that it might just be easiest to make one of those segments and just array modifier them on top of each other. Maybe it's over a curve even. That's actually not a bad idea. Yeah, let's do that. That seems like a good idea. Yeah. Going back to the talk about particles though. Even if I can make them interact with a skeletal mesh, which I sincerely doubt that'll let me do that, but hey, there's always hope. There's always still gonna be a bit of an issue there with that being like a CPU only thing. Because in order for particles to have collisions, they need to be CPU particles. There's some ways to do it with GPU particles, like using the depth buffer and stuff like that, which for this actually might work decently well, but then they only have collision when they're being rendered. So if they're occluded by something, they can't calculate collision because it's, well, if it's done on the GPU, it needs to be actively like visible in order for that to work. So I'm not a huge fan of having to do that. So it has to be like a CPU sim, which means that I have to be a little careful with how many particles I spawn. And I don't ever like having to be careful about that because I like spawning a lot of particles. Because it makes life just a lot easier. Now, how are we going to do this though? Maybe a material with distance fields. I don't think a material would interact with particles like that. Not in any method that I know of. I suppose you could try to displace the vertices of the particle, because even sprite particles are just like planes away from like the distance field and make it like morph around that way. Yeah, Pixar had issues with cloth physics in Coco as well for the skeletal characters. Somehow I feel like me reproducing that in Unreal is not going to happen. If fucking Pixar had issues with things like getting stuck on bones and shit like that, there's no chance in hell for me to do a good job on that. So I kind of just will have to work around it. Now, let's see if let's auto mirror this one as well. And actually, maybe, potentially, possibly subdivide it as well. We're gonna pretend like there's no shading issues here. Because there isn't. Well, there still is, but you can't see them, so who the fuck cares? These are going to be stacked on top of each other anyway. Yeah, I recall something like that as well. Them fixing that with like a bigger collision box. And that's kind of how Unreal does it to begin with, right? Because unless you specifically enable per poly collision, which you just generally shouldn't do, on a skeletal mesh, it just like uses the physics body for collision anyway. And that is initially actually my problem, is that the parts of the physics body that it uses for the collision are too hard to properly like get close enough to the mesh for the bones to still collide with the bones roughly. But the cloth has to start out outside of that that collision thing, because otherwise it doesn't collide with it. So that's kind of like part of the issue to begin with, which isn't great. So if we just like scale this, do we like extrude this inward a little? Nah, I don't think extrusion will work all too well. But maybe if we inset and then extrude along normals. That works well enough. But if we're going to do that, I think what we want to do is definitely don't have overlapping vertices. Isn't there an option somewhere in here to auto merge? There we go, that's what I need. So if we do this now, it should automatically have merged those. Or maybe it doesn't. In which case we just merge. Hold on, I need to get used to like M. Merge by distance. That's not really what I was looking for. Or was it? It might have been. Let's see. If we extrude these along their normals again, what does this accomplish? Now, what I think I want to do actually is select this edge, move it up a little bit, and just like shrink this down. No, I want to do that. And then also crease this edge. Somewhere there is a thing there. There we go. No, I definitely just straight up need. Maybe I don't need another edge there. If we move this down a bit. Just to try to see what it looks like, I'm going to add a temporary array modifier. Just to see what this looks like when it's stacked on top of each other. Yeah, that looks shit. That doesn't look good. I also think that it actually should be extruded out and not in. Let me look at some more pictures of the spines, because that's, again, not going to get me on a watch list at all. You know, right about now, I could do with like one of those little posing models, because they have like modeled spines, don't they? Just for like the shape of what these spine segments look like. I am, by the way, aware that these segments all usually have like different sizes to them and stuff. Just shut the fuck up for a moment, okay? I don't want to think about that, because that means that my strategy is not going to work. Yeah, no, so what it actually seems to be is that it is slightly inset. It's just nowhere near this much. So if I just crease this up a little more. And if we crease this down. Yeah, that's part of the issue. I think what I want is I want these to be able to clip through each other. So instead of relative offset, we can still do a relative offset. We'll just put it to like 0.9. And then if I extrude this up a little, and I scale this down a little, That does not seem to be like exactly round. I wonder why that is. It's hardly ideal. But it'll work, kinda. I just need to make sure that this thing actually has a face. What the fuck did I even do? Just select all those and extrude these up. Okay. We'll get somewhere one day, eventually. Shade smooth. Does that fix stuff? You know, we're never actually going to look at this very closely, so I probably am putting way too much attention into this very, very, very small detail. Let's keep on going, and we can get back to this at some point in the future. Give it a 2 more. I probably won't. No. Fun ID? Maybe? Not really. Let's try to like just extrude these out a little bit. And then... Hold on. There we go. You're telling me that's not an edge loop? You're killing me, man. Crease that down a bit. Definitely needs more geometry. Like a lot more. Which direction do those little, like, stabby things go? Just outward? I feel like they curve in a little bit, right? Ever so slightly, at least. So if we just move those a little like that, and then rotate them around a little, and then give them a little bit extra, like, geometry. Because that way we can say, hey, select these. Proportional editing, and also not that much. For some reason, they don't like being shaded smooth, but I mean, we're getting somewhere with the spine. We've also got like the fucking things on the back, which is kind of just like a spike coming out of the back. It's kind of badass that we all have one of those inside of our bodies, right? But that shouldn't be too difficult. That's literally just another one of those, but this one goes down and comes a little bit more to... That's too much. Comes a little bit more to a point, and then again... Actually, I've got a better idea. Why do this manually when we literally have a tool for this? Like, this is going to look a little weird for a moment here until I put this in the right position and rotation. It's probably like 60 degrees or something. Okay, so maybe this doesn't work that well. Because for some reason this is now not merging. Which is really fucking me up. Why not? Hold on, let's set this back to 0, 0, 0. Remember when I said, hey, spin tool, that's fun? You probably don't, because I don't feel like I ever said that. This is so fucked. It's mostly to do with the fact that this is a mirror modifier kind of situation. Can we just, like, not? I know. I'm trying to cancel this operation. Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, Blender. That's... It just screams at you that it's an invalid operation, and then you're just stuck. Apparently that's how that works. God, I love this program. I do not. So what now? It's an invalid access, I know. Doesn't change the fact that you keep screaming at me for no fucking reason. So, spin tool. Never set your access to 000 because Blender freaks the fuck out and soft locks itself. Seemingly. That's certainly what this feels like. Anybody's run into this before? Because I really don't want to nuke all the progress I've made so far. I would really, really rather not have to close Blender and reopen. But at this point, it seems like that might be the only option. Like, escape? Escape! Escape did it. Escape didn't do it when I pressed it once. I had to press it like 3 times in a row, but it fucking did it. Okay, so let's not use the spin tool. Let's go the fuck back into object mode and also save my progress. So, let's see, where am I going to put this? In my assets folder. That seems reasonable. Assets, models, characters, bosses, Reaper, Reaper boss 2. Okay, so if we run into any more issues, I can just close Blender. Let's Ctrl-Z our way out of that. I want to try one more time with the spin tool, just cause. I feel like I should be able to get this to work. Even if it's not always like mega intuitive how this works. Can I just like put the 3D cursor? Is it shift click, shift right click, shift right click? That's pretty centered, I think. Oh, that's the wrong side. Now it should be on the right side. And it is. I mean, that's an interesting shape. It's not exactly what I had in mind. Let's try again, right? So we do this, and then we... pull them down, and then we try to pull them in enough to make both of these sides merge back together. You know what? I've decided I do not give a shit. Just gonna do it with extrusion, because I'm wasting too much time otherwise. Is that a bad reason to do it this way? Yep. Do I care? Nope. I very much do not. So let's make this smaller, a lot thinner as well potentially, specifically these. Maybe you don't use proportional for this. We'll get this figured out. I never said I was particularly like a pro at Blender. There's a reason that I don't make like many Blender tutorials anymore. Because I don't use it enough. And frankly, like 9 times out of 10 when I'm working in Blender, things end up being kind of clunky. Like they end up working for the most part. Barely. Yeah, no, that's... You know what? The funny thing is, before I started trying with the spin tool, I actually had a pretty decent attempt at making that little, like, fucking spine thing. Well, the entire thing is a spine. Then I figured, hey, let's use the spin tool. And now I can't even fucking reproduce that anymore because apparently I'm just, like, tilted beyond belief. So let's give this another shot. We want to do this around the x-axis, I believe. So we do that. And that makes it go inwards. So if we just change this angle to positive, there we fucking go. Doing things a little bit less on vibes and more on like actual data turns out kind of helpful. And now with proportional editing I can just shrink this down in the X, pull it down a little more, and that will do. The entire thing as a whole probably could be like a little bit more squat. And the way we will achieve that is through selecting specific edge loops and moving those around. And now if we just say, hey, make the 0.9 as well, and we say, hey, we want like 20 of these, 25, 22. I guess we got a fucking spine, don't we? Is it a good spine? Maybe not. But it's a spine. And that's what's important. I don't really think we can easily... We can put them on a curve. Like, I think it's this place. And then we can say, hey, we want to displace them along a curve if we really wanted to. Is it not this place? Deform around the curve. We can give it a shot just to see what happens. So just add a Bezier curve. It pretty much right off the bat has a pretty good shape, I'll admit. Right? So let's try to see how this ends up working for us. I mean, it certainly could be worse. Just need to select this curve now. This point. Oh, that's one of the tangents I think I'm moving right now. Is it? No, that's a point. Yeah, that's definitely a point. So why? Why are you being difficult about this? This is why I don't like this whole curve business, because clearly I am missing something. This thing doesn't start at the start of the curve. Is this like a position thing? This might be a position thing. Nope, it's not. I mean, that's a cool effect. That's not what I'm looking for. It's not a Bezier curve. Yes, it is. I mean, it literally says Bezier curve. So, and it's got like, it's got tangents. So it like definitely is. Oh, this thing itself needs to be set to location 0, 0. Fuck. See, that's what I hate about this shit. Oh. That's weird. Like, its location? Like, this is its origin point. Its origin point moves around for some fucking reason. And that's a reason that I don't really care enough about to go and worry about. Yeah, actually making this thing curve around a little bit more is probably a good thing. Now that I'm actually doing it. Oh my god. Now that I'm actually doing it, it does make this look quite a bit better. I mean, aside from the fact that those ribs now look like absolute shit. How do the ribs even connect to the spine? Is it through these little bits? I feel like it's through those little bits. I think it is. Do we have any doctors in chat? Because if we do, I would very much like some advice right now. I'm going to pretend like it is through those little bits, and if it's not, we'll figure it out when we get to that. But that does mean that we can say, hey, this fucking bullshit that we had back here, we can just get rid of that. And then we just connect this up to... to about there. That looks a little wonky. We'll make it work. Ah, no. All of a sudden everyone is a doctor. Yeah, I mean, even fake doctor opinions would be welcome right about now. But that is very much how the internet works, is everybody wants to be an expert on everything at all times. So asking for, hey, do we have any experts on this topic? There's gonna be people that answer yes. The question is, still, do we actually have any experts on this topic? This also needs to be a lot more symmetrical, because at this point it is not. These line up pretty well though already, so not a lot to be done there. That's neat. And these we probably hook up to the ones down here. So we we skip one, and then we hook them up to that, and we'll tidy that up in a bit. And within a bit, I mean at some point in the vague future, if I don't forget. Because the issue now is that in order to even do that, I need to apply this, making it like destructive. So I want to like not do that for as long as I can. Let's try to get this curve a little bit more centered though. So we have this is the point, and we want to have that pretty much on the x equals 0, right? No, not x equals 0, y equals 0. There we go. So it's exactly in the middle. And then for this also make sure it's exactly in the middle, so that the only deformation for them is left to right. But then we also need to make sure that these things are rotated properly, which we can actually do by setting the tangent point to y equals 0. Ooh, maybe not. Maybe not. That's the up and down. So z equals 0. Yeah, okay, so it's the local value. So if we set this to z equals 0 as well, that should then line up pretty much straight. It doesn't. So that's fucking amazing. Also, this thing is nowhere near on the 0 line. What the fuck are you talking about? Is it because this thing as a whole is not on the... That might be why. No. None of this makes sense. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to line up well enough for it to be somewhat symmetrical. That's the only thing that's really important here, and the question is, does it? Because it looks like it kind of does, and I can move around some vertices to connect things up a little bit better as we go along. This is for the game, yeah. At least, I thought that with the first attempt at a skeleton boss as well, and that ended up being a nightmare. So I don't know. Maybe we'll use this, maybe we won't. Okay, let's just put this into like a backup collection, so that we always have this to go back to. So we'll call this B. We can call it B, that's fine. Copy it, paste it, disable it, and now we can actually like destructively apply things without me losing my mind. So let's apply all this shit, get rid of the curve because we no longer need it, and now Now we get to the real shit, right? Because now we want to... You can just do this with like Shift plus or something, right? Control plus? No. Control Shift plus? There's a way to expand your Alt plus. There's a way to easily expand your selection. Blender expand selection. Control numpad plus. I was close. I was close enough. So we select this and we do Control numpad plus. There we go. So we can easily delete these faces and then use quad fill. Grid fill is what it's called. There we go. So we delete the faces on these as well then. Select the edge. There we grid fill. And that kind of works, right? There's a little bit of stubbliness to it, but we're going to connect up those things anyway, so maybe that isn't even that bad. So let's delete all the ones that we need, just like for efficiency's sake. First do all the deleting and then we'll do all the filling. Just for me to like get in the groove. Pivot point on the actual spine. Now, I'm still thinking whether or not I want to make a new skull. I already have a skull, but it's not a very like animatable skull. It's like its jaw is not a separate mesh from the rest of the skull. But I still maybe could use it as like a base. Definitely need more room there. Still could use it maybe as like a base to model a new skull off of. Which could be... I keep pressing the wrong thing. Hold on, can we just like Control F this? Because... Okay, now let's connect these things up a little bit better. Oh, my internet's dropping. No, come on, don't do that now. If this problem persists, I'm going to stop streaming to Twitch. I'll keep streaming to YouTube. Unless my internet like actually just straight up dies, of course. What if I try to like loop tool this into a circle? What are you gonna do when I try that? I mean, you do make it a little bit thicker. The geometry is going to fucking hate this. So maybe that's a bad idea. Yeah, my internet just dropped for a split second there, but luckily it managed to fix itself up relatively well. Okay, let's try to rotate these fuckers to be in like a similar rotation to those other things sticking out. Because I still think that this is like doable. I think we can make this work. Like, especially from a distance, that works, right? I think that works. I'm gonna have to, like, give it a bit to really decide whether or not I hate it or not. Because I feel like, after a while, I might. But for now, I don't dislike it. like rotate things around a bit, and we're going to need to make these things a little bit more beefy. Yeah, it's definitely not supposed to be realistic, because again, this thing only's got like 4 fucking ribs. While a human being has, well, 4 ribs on either side, I should say. Well, a human being has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's still less than I thought. I thought we had like 11 on each side. Huh. Shows what I know about biology. So, it's fine if it's a little weird. Let's make this influence a little smaller and just like pull this down a little. At this point I'm focusing a little bit too much on details that probably don't actually matter. $24. You've also got a couple of those ribs down there that aren't connected up. So you've got 12 on either side. So me with, what did I say, like 11? It's actually not that far off. Okay, so now the question is how do we connect up the arms and the skull? I'm going to put in... I already have a set of arms and a skull. So I'm going to put those in for now, at least like for a block out, to get a feel for this guy. I just need to figure out where I store those. So hold on for a quick moment there. Just need to find where I put those. I prefer the Blender files, I think. I don't think it matters, actually. That's a train you're hearing. Assets, models, characters, enemies, Reaper Basic. High res objects. That's probably what we want. You're gonna wonder if those floating ribs like actually serve a purpose, or if that's just like evolutionary leftovers, because I don't feel like they really would supply a lot of like structural integrity to the ribs. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. That's don't care. That's what I need. It's the only things I need here. I mean, that's actually not too bad. For like the size of them, I think the size at this point is good. Maybe they could do with being a little... Definitely make this like transparent. Maybe they could do with being like a little closer to the center, both of them. So... Yeah, that's probably way too many vertices to be moving around, isn't it? Yeah, I probably should have thought about that. I swear, if you crash now, I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose. I don't know what I'm gonna lose, but I'm gonna lose something. He's gonna be floating, yeah, because I hate animating legs. Things not having legs makes just everything so much easier. So you will notice that quite a few of the characters in my game either can fly or float. Because a thing with no legs, its idle animation is just literally it moving up and down. Its walking animation is just literally its idle animation, but it's moving. It's so good. And this is not like a me thing. This is like an animation thing in general. Animators in general, when they can, they try to avoid showing legs because legs are really complicated in the way they move. I mean, just look out for it in animated movies, specifically 2D animated movies, but 3D to a certain extent as well, I'm sure. With 3D, we have the benefit of inverse kinematics, which makes the entire thing a lot easier to deal with. But specifically with like 2D animated movies, just look out for when characters are walking. You will notice that like a noticeable amount of those shots, they will try to like cut the camera around like the waistline, so they don't actually have to animate legs. They just animate a character moving up and down slightly and through the frame. And as such, they don't have to animate the legs, which saves them so much hassle and so much pain not to have to do that. And I'm kind of with that, but in 3D, even though I do have the benefit of inverse kinematics, but just making that look good, I don't want to say it doubles my animation time, but it definitely adds a significant amount to it. Are we just going to sit here and wait for this thing to start responding, or are we going to just hope that it made an autosave and I can recover at least like right before the import? I think we're going to just hope that it made an autosave, because otherwise I'm going to probably be sitting here for like 20 minutes, because this thing is now trying to move around like 100,000 vertices, which I should have thought about that. Yeah. Here we are. I'm just going to close this. Just like close the program, that's fine. Don't need to try to make it respond. And then we can just Blender 4.0 and hope that we can recover the last session. Okay, that's not a good start. File, recover, autosave. That's from 5 minutes ago. That seems promising. Okay, that's got all the things connected up already. So we can just Reaper Boss 2, and then we can say just overwrite that. Now all we need to do is re-import the other Reaper that I already had. So we can just import, I think it was an OBJ, right? So that's the only one we need. Remove all the rest. Save again. And actually thinking about it, maybe it's not even that bad, the distance this has. I feel like I'm going to try again. I know I shouldn't, but I'm going to try again. So if I just say, hey, all this shit, select everything on this side. Try to move it. Oh, maybe without proportional editing this will work a lot better. Yeah, I think that works a lot better. So move it into the X like minus 0.5, 0.15, and then we can say these, move it in the X 0.15, so they're actually still symmetrical. I feel like that feels better, right? Having it a little bit closer like that. I think that's better. So now I need to find wherever the fuck I put that skull. It's probably not in enemies, it's probably in props. FBX. No. Oh, skull. There we go. Okay, so I've got a 40,000 vertice version of it as an OBJ. So we're going to be importing that one. Skull 40k. There we go. It's going to take a second. It just straight up didn't do it. Kindly the fuck. Just refuses to import. Can you drag and drop into Blender? Don't think you can. Surely I have an FBX as well, right? If I open the low poly skull, yeah, that's already gone through decimating, so that's not something that I can really use. Oh, the 40k version actually is also already decimated. the proper version is like a couple million vertices because I made it in ZBrush. So it's probably not going to like this either, but let's give it a shot. I don't know why it's just straight up refusing to import the OBJ file. Yeah, it's just for making normal stuff. It's not actually going to be like that in Engine. Like, even this right now is probably unreasonably large for a skeletal mesh. Because keep in mind, skeletal meshes can't use nanites. So if I enable the statistics here, we're at the moment at 500,000 triangles, which is probably not a great thing. So we're going to need to like retopo this at some point as well. That said, I think the majority of that is probably in these. Yeah, if I disable the arms, we're down to like 100,000, which still isn't great. It's a lot better. And these things obviously, like, they can do with a lot less vertices. And I already also have retopologized versions of those arms that I can... Probably should have imported that together. We can worry about that a little bit later. Blender not importing .obj. Why? Why do you do this? Yeah, it's not that the object is too small or too big. It just straight up like doesn't exist. Do I need to like have a collection selected so that it has a place to import into? Because that would be fucking weird. And I could believe that the full resolution version of this skull is just too big. But the 40,000 vertice version should be fine, right? Let's not split by object at all, split by group. I don't want to split anything, I just want you to import. Oh, was I exporting? I think I was exporting. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's bad. Oh, that's not good. That's oh fuck. Version control. Please tell me that this is something that I at some point checked out. Has to be, right? Assets. Models. Props. I still have the ZBrush. I can just export it from ZBrush again. It's fine, actually. But I would prefer to not have to do that right now. So can we just... I have no source control for these items. Okay. Well, let's go to ZBrush. Somewhere in here I have the skull. So where's the goal of it also? Like, I think it's this one. So we'll also get to see the attempt I made last time at this guy, which I think we can agree that this thing is just goofy and weird. That said, if I add in the ribcage and the spine here, maybe that makes it a little bit better, but I don't know. I didn't really like this version. This, however, is the skull that we had, which is, yeah, it's about 5 million, 5 million quads, which is insane. But like everything here, like the teeth, that's all like geometry detail. So Blender's not going to like this. I'll promise you that. Now, how do you export from ZBrush again? Because again, I've not done a lot of ZBrush work. Export as a tool, yes. Skull.obj. Yes. Takes a moment. So what happened there is that I accidentally, instead of importing that skull, I exported this file over the skull, which means that Blender doesn't even have like a dialog box for overwriting pre-existing files when you do that. Blender, get the fuck on that. I know you're a free piece of software, but that is actually unacceptable. The fact that it doesn't ask you when you're trying to overwrite a pre-existing file. Like, that's just straight up not okay. They do the red text box when they do. I mean, I didn't see anything. I didn't have to click, I'm sure I want to overwrite, when I accidentally exported. So, even if they give like a red pop-up box like, hey, you just did a thing, I would argue that is not enough. Like, you specifically need to ask me whether or not I meant to do that. Because it's just too easy to have things like this happen, right? This thing doesn't have a neck. Fuck me. Yeah, I didn't think about that. This is me when I've been at a computer for like an entire day of work. It's just no neck, shoulders like literally in my ears. Yeah, okay. Definitely need a little bit more neck here. Okay, let's we need to do a little bit of reworking there in a moment, but for now we can disable this and we can just like copy it back over these two. And then just make this curve. Now the curve, I want it to be in edit mode. I'll just extrude this up a little bit more. I mean, that's not great. Let's hide these and first just focus on the curve, because we can make this curve a little... a little smoother, maybe? I don't know if this is particularly much better. I think... yeah, he's just like ultra shrugging. Definitely also don't want him to like be tilting his head at all times. Okay. Let's put the skull back in, just up a little higher now, and maybe a little more forward. I think this is up too high now, right? Let's take a look at the reference images that I have. Hold on. I'm trying to get them onto my screen. Like if we look at this image here, I don't know if that's a good reference actually. Like I think the neck is about like half the length of the breastbone, and here it's about the entire length of the breastbone. So let's just try to like move this down a little bit. Don't you fucking dare. Thank you. Let's save. Oh, it's because I'm trying to go into edit mode on something that has 5 million vertices. You know what? That's fair. I mean, a giraffe reaper would be kind of funny, right? Just say, hey, this is what my fucking guy looks like. Deal with it. To be fair, it does become a lot more Dark Souls when we do this. Which might not be a bad thing. It would be scary. It would also be then so much more annoying to animate. I think. Let's make this a lot thinner as well. And then at this point I think... Ooh, hold the fuck on. This is also just like very white to begin with. In that direction. Yeah, there we go. So make that a lot thinner as well. Which makes the ribs coming out of them feel a little bit more reasonable too. And then maybe like even move this down a little bit and bevel it. That feels somewhat more reasonable. And then here too, these ribs probably, or rather this bone probably shouldn't be that much taller than the actual ribs coming out of it. I do feel like these need to be a lot thicker. Which I don't know how I'm gonna do that, to be honest with you. Like, can we... Is there any way to inflate these other than... Well, I can go into sculpting mode and just inflate them that way, right? And there's not a great way of doing things, but... it does work. But man, does this suck doing this with a mouse. Should I just hook up my tablet? Yeah, I'm not going to be doing any like detail sculpting on this, so I don't think even the time of hooking up my tablet is going to be worth it, like in the slightest. It would be a lot easier to do this properly though. I don't have this mirror, do I? Fuck. Oh no, I do. Hold on, I do. Oh, because it's got a mirror modifier. I'm a genius. I totally meant to do that. Totally works. Let's... Man, this is the most fucked up way that I could be doing this. But you know, it does improve things a little. We'll get back more into that in a moment, but first I need to decide whether or not this is how I want this thing to be, as far as like their spine goes. And I'm gonna be real with you, the spine actually looks pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of the way this ribcage is looking at the moment. So I'm going to be adding more ribs. My only question is how? How am I going to do that in a reasonable way? Because I can just like... I actually can just do that, I think. Because this immediately makes it look a lot better. Like, I might not even have to add more ribs. I might just be able to say, hey, we take this, we, well... excuse me, what vertex is the issue here? Okay, hold on. We have to worry about this for a moment. These two vertices need to be slid up a little. And then we can pull the rest up. If everything is selected, that is. Like, that actually immediately looks a lot better. Like, it's insane how much just pulling up those things to make them in a slightly different shape, like go down first, just immediately made it look better. I'm actually kind of blown away by that. Now, my next idea is to... Man, we're gonna be messing with like individual vertices here for a moment, so don't panic. I have everything under control. Hopefully. But the idea here being, if we can do this, and then we select these, we can pull them out ever so slightly. And then the alternating ones we can pull in a little bit to just like get a little bit more depth to this bone. Still not great. I mean, yeah, everybody loves me some good ribs. I still think that having 1 or 2 more ribs is probably a good idea, to be honest. But at this point, I also feel like if I want to do that, I probably need to start the whole rib cage over again. So what I'm going to do instead is one other thing that we definitely don't have at the moment is like any rounding to the front of the rib cage too much. And I know that the brass bone itself isn't particularly round, but I think for our purposes, if I just say, hey, I want to like select this and like pull it out a little bit. And then pull the entire thing back in a little bit, of course. That might be a little extreme. Hold on. Just pull that down a little bit more. I do think that rounding that off a little bit more also does improve things quite a bit. And maybe what we want as well, and at this point I'm just trying things, right? If we just pull this up even more, do we like that? I definitely don't like whatever the fuck is happening down here. I'm not even sure what is happening down here. Hold on. It's a back face, but I don't know from where, and that's bothersome. Face orientation, please. Which face is that even? Is it... It's actually a very good question. Which face is that? What is happening here? Okay. So it's those 2 vertices, and if I just like move those back a little, does that solve my issue? Please tell me that just solves my issue. It seems to just solve my issue. Fantastic. Kind of. A little bit. Almost. Where the fuck is this thing going? What is this vertex doing just all the way the fuck in here? And why can't I select it? Okay, hold on. We need to enable this. Question: in blueprints, there an event hits. Is this the same as hit notify in C++? It might be. I don't think it is. Because I think C++ also just has a on hit. Maybe. But maybe it's called hit notify. That actually makes sense that it would be called hit notify. I assume that it is, but I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, I'm making this in Unreal Engine. Of course, I'm making this model in Blender, but the game runs in Unreal. Why can't I just straight up not move this through this? Up there we go. It's just straight up not letting me move it in the X direction for some reason. If we set this to auto smooth, that does actually improve things a bit. I still think something is wrong about this. And at this point, it might just be that, like, we're back to this being too tall. Maybe I just need to chill it a little bit on the details on this thing, because I'm starting to like over hyper focus on it. I've never used Godot, but I understand it's pretty similar to Unity, except for like the whole "we're gonna bleed you dry" bit that Unity tried to do, of course. It's no longer doing that, so that's not entirely fair to complain about. But still, and Godot is straight up just open source, isn't it? So that's nice. You can just like fork your own stuff off of it. A GTX 1660 might be a little bit, or like 4 gigabytes of VRAM might be a little on the low side for Unreal. Like I have 6 gigabytes, and if I just run around in like a pretty easy scene, that's fine. But if I run around in my full game at epic settings, sometimes even high settings, it starts complaining about running out of video memory. So Unreal specifically uses quite a lot of VRAM, especially in the editor itself. Like once your packaged game is out on like itch or Steam or whatever, there's not that big of a like overhead cost in VRAM for Unreal. But the Unreal editor seems to use quite a bit of VRAM, so 4 gigabytes might be a little on the painful side there. But if you find just like developing your game with all of the graphic settings set to like medium or low for the most part, that should be fine. That's what I do. I test out most of my game in medium for like just gameplay purposes, and then when I'm trying to like do lighting and stuff, I set it to high. I'm just going to keep it at this for now. I also feel like just generally, maybe this just needs to be a little bit bigger in general. Hold on. Maybe that is also, like, if I just make this... Yeah, no. Like, a little bit bigger, sure, but not that much. I do think that that does make things a little bit more, like, in... a little bit better in comparison to where the fuck is Pure Ref? There we go. Like the ribcage and skull need to be kind of like the skull needs to fit inside of the ribcage, right? And right now, like it barely does. So that also maybe means that the skull is a little too big. Like the ribcage being a fair bit bigger probably actually is a good thing. At which point we have more room to, yeah, at this point now we have more room to say, hey, I want to pull things in a little bit more again. So I want to say, hey, increase the size of proportional editing. And we want to, like, for fuck's sake. I so need a new mouse. Like, pull this in a little bit more and maybe even pull it up a little. And then for these we can, like, pull it out ever so slightly. Yeah, that's getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. I have a mouse that I want to buy, that I have, like, in my wish list in the store that I'm going to be buying it in. I do need to move this thing forward a little bit now, though. And it's got like 13 buttons, which will be amazing. I really want to try to see if I can map those buttons to my macros that I'm setting up with Touch Portal. I've been moving all my macros from MacroDeck, which I have been using up until now, to Touch Portal, which is a different app. And it's really kind of cool. Like, does it have like my IP address on it? I don't think it does. It might a little bit, actually. If I just, like, keep it down here, it'll be fine. I don't even know if it's at my IP address, but, like, this is pretty cool, right? It's like a Stream Deck type thing, but we have, like this is some of my work-related stuff. I've got, like, a bunch of macros set up here, and this is, like, switching audio tracks, and this just runs a auto hotkey command. But then I also, in, like, my OBS stuff, it just hooks into, like, the OBS web thing. So it just directly influences my OBS. For Unreal, I have, like, a lot of coding stuff set up, like, just, like, typing out uProperty and letting me, like, put in the most common specifiers, that kind of stuff. And now I have all of those keys on my phone, which is quite nice. But for things like Adobe Premiere, I have enable disable on a shortcut key here, right? I could probably just map. Think about this. I don't need a macro for this. It's just one key. I could probably just map this to a mouse button directly. But what I really want to do is be able to, like, map these buttons to not just buttons on my app on my mobile phone, but also keyboard and mouse buttons. Because if I can do that and I have 13 buttons on my mouse, I can do, like, a lot of my entire editing workflow without ever using my keyboard, which would be fantastic. So yeah, it's like an €80 mouse, but it's got 13 buttons, which includes, like, left, right, and middle mouse button. But it's got, like, 8 remappable buttons. So on both the left and the right mouse button, it's got, like, 2 buttons on the sides. Then you've got your general, like, forward key and back key kind of buttons that almost every modern mouse has, but those are then remappable. It's got and this is really nice for, like, editing work as well. It's got like a sniper mode button. Like, when you hold it down, your DPI goes, like, way the fuck down, which is very nice for, like, in-game through scope. But if you're editing, like, a value like this, right, it would be really nice to be able to hold down that button and then have, like, final control over those values as well. It's a really nice mouse. I'm not going to be able to buy it anytime soon, but it's a really nice mouse. Yeah, let's give this a couple more segments. That's something that I've been, like, thinking for a hot minute about now. I think yeah, and then we can take, like, 2 of these off again. Raisin Naga Trinity. It might be. I think it was a I think it was something different. Let me check. I don't know if I put it in my no, I didn't. I think it was a GTX mouse though. Hello back. Yeah, at this point I think this is actually a pretty like good base for this entire thing. Like having just sat here for like 10 minutes and just chatting to you guys and now looking back at it again, I think this is what we're going to go with. So I'm going to make another backup here. New collection. We'll call this collection C. Just going to copy the entire thing into there. Make it invisible. And then apply the shit out of all the modifiers. And then we can get rid of the Bezier curve again. Don't even know what this cylinder is. That's the previous spline. Don't need that anymore. Okay, let's line these things up now. Again, a little bit more than they were previously. Am I going to keep 2 distance? I think I'm just still going to keep them at a distance of 1. Like 1... What is it called? Vertebrae? One of those little segments each. So that we still have the shape of them going like up. I quite like that. And I also think that is reasonably close to the way that they're connected to your spine in actual biology, which again I don't really particularly care about the actually arguments because I'm not making a biological model here. I am making a fucking Dark Souls boss. It's not really Dark Souls, but you know what I mean. So now, hold on, can we? We can. Okay, that's fantastic actually, because that means what I can do is I can just do all of these at once. Don't need to destroy that one though. So just like this one, and this one. Is that all of them? We need one more. We need one more. At some point, I'm going to have to do so much art for my game once all the dungeons and such are just straight up finished, aside from art, that I'm going to get used to Blender's controls a little bit more. But that's gonna be a while from now. And in my ideal world, which is not gonna happen, but in my ideal world at that point, I'm just paying people for it. But that's very unlikely. Because I need to make a lot of art. And frankly, the most difficult art pieces that I need to make are the character models for the bosses. And by the time I get to like making the environment art for everything, that's going to be finished. So it's not actually going to save me that much heartache. And by the time I've done the most difficult bits, I might as well do everything, right? I have, by the way, pretty much like semi-definitively decided that the game is going to have AI-generated music, by the way. Because I need to start making decisions on stuff at some point. And whether or not I have AI-generated music does influence like what I do with my music system. Man, this thing is not even remotely symmetrical, but you know what? That doesn't actually matter that much. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, AI generated music. It's been a long week. I'm a little scatterbrained. I've pretty much decided I'm going to go with AI generated music because the alternative is having a composer, which is going to be decently expensive because I need like at least 2 tracks per dungeon. Meaning that I have like 2 tracks for the tutorial dungeon and then 2 tracks for 6 more dungeons. So that's going to be like 7 dungeons and then a final dungeon as well. So that's 8 dungeons times 2 would be 16 tracks. And then reasonably every boss fight is going to have like its own music as well, right? So add another 8 on top of that. That's like 24 tracks. That would be pretty expensive. And the alternative is having the normal music for every dungeon and the battle music for every dungeon not being necessarily 2 different tracks, but just having like different parts of those songs, like enable and disable, depending on like the intensity that we need to have. That does cut like 8 musical tracks out, but that also, I imagine, makes the music itself more complex to do. So I don't think that's actually like gonna save any money. So I've decided, you know what, if I'm not going to do a fun, interesting, very dynamic music system, I might as well just do AI generated music. I'm doing literally everything else by hand. If people have problems with that, they can go fuck themselves, frankly. I've been kind of debating whether or not because Steam's terms of service now say that if you use Copilot, GitHub Copilot, that you should mark your game as AI assisted or something like that. Like AI generative content is in here, which I think that is bullshit. I really think that Copilot should not be counted under that. But I've been kind of debating, like, am I just going to straight up like not include that, even though I use Copilot? And if I do AI music anyway, I'm going to have to include that tag, which kind of takes care of that moral thing as well. So I think that's the way we're going to go about doing that. You know, I actually don't dislike how this looks. I actually think this looks pretty good. I have no idea how I'm going to do the cloth. I'm probably going to like start with just like a cube and sculpt it out or something. But I have no idea how I'm going to like connect things up. It needs to have a little bit of cloth, right? I can't get away with just not having cloth. Like, I don't think that's reasonable. Adaptive music may be more complex, but much less work than entirely new music. What about non-copyright music? I'm not going to use copyright-free music. Like, I'm not going to use music where people are playing this and like, oh, I heard this on like 15,000 different YouTube videos. I really don't want that. So maybe adaptive music would still be then a cheaper option than having separate tracks if I were to hire a composer. That would make then 8 musical tracks for the dungeons. One that supports being like adaptive, which I would then also need to code a system for, but that'll be fine. And then one for the boss fight itself. So I don't know. I have no idea how much more complex a musical track would be that would support that kind of like dynamic enabling and disabling of layers, like to make how much more musically complex that is. But I imagine that a request like that would still be more expensive than just like make a song with a certain like feel to it. Either way, for now, the placeholders are going to just straight up be AI. Like this guy, which I quite liked. So the way I think that will work is, let's just do this as like a mock-up. I don't think this is going to be the thing that I end up keeping. But if we just do this as a mock-up real quick, right? So we say, hey, we just add a cube here, because it does need to have like two sides to it. And we put that on your shoulders. I mean, if it's a matter of cost, if I have the budget and I had to choose between, hey, adaptive music for one track instead of two separate tracks is either about the same price or like marginally more expensive, I would still go with the adaptive music, because that's just like real cool. Even though it would then also like take more effort to program, I'm entirely fine putting that effort into there. So it's definitely still an option that I'm like not entirely disregarding. It's just like realistically, I'm probably not going to have. I don't know. Apology, please. Probably just not going to have that kind of budget for that. And the thing is, if I'm going to do that, I can't really do that for just one dungeon. At that point, I need to do it for the entire game, which makes the whole thing expensive. Man, I should not be doing this with a mouse. But yet here we are. I will say the way dynamic topology works in like Blender and even in Unreal, I tried it earlier this week on stream. The dynamic topology thing in Unreal. It's so nice that it just adds geometry when and where you need it, rather than having to. Okay, so maybe that's less than ideal. Actually, no, that's fine. Rather than just having to like subdivide essentially like your entire mesh. Not even subdividing, it's entirely remeshing in just the remesh options, but also what ZBrush does. What the fuck is happening to my mesh? It's probably just... You know what we'll do? Change to a grabbing brush real quick. Yeah, the grabbing brush isn't really doing me any favors, is it? I hate doing stuff like this so much. It doesn't even need to go all the way down to his wrist, right? Something a little like this, maybe a little bit more, is fine. Again, this is mostly as a mock-up, because if I were doing this seriously, I would just connect up my tablet, because, I mean, look at this shit. Okay, now that we have a little bit more surface area, can we snake hook again? We can, but it's just the directionality fucking sucks. Like, just go in the direction that I want you to go. Thank you. That's exactly what I needed you to do for once. I suppose elastic deform probably would have been better than grabbing a moment ago. So what I would very much like at this point is be able to just say, hey, I want to like put a spline or whatever around here and use elastic deform along that spline instead of having it like a cursor. That would be fucking fantastic, wouldn't it? But I don't think that's a thing that you can do. And because this thing is so fucking thin, you have to like drag these across little bit by little bit. And that's not even like a mouse thing. That's just like that's how areas work. And I don't love it. But you know what? Maybe there's something to this. Maybe I can just... Oh, no, don't do that. Just smooth everything a little bit. That's still not it, is it? Let's try to remesh, maybe. Maybe a good old remesh will do this a little bit better. At least the geometry will be equally spaced out now. So, yeah, we can smooth things out a little bit easier because there's more geometry to work with. And maybe elastic deform will work better. Fucking doubt it, but it's worth a try. Yeah, not really, is it? I just want to fall off, stroke, brush. Cavity inverted? No. There's got to be something to this, right? We can like auto mask topology. I feel like this is the opposite of what I wanted to do. This is just taking like the mesh loops. What I want is like face sets. Maybe that's what I... No. I don't think mesh boundary is going to be it either. But we might as well give it a shot. Maybe it is cavity after all. Yeah, it's definitely not, is it? Area normal. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We are fucking getting somewhere. Okay, so now it's only taking things along that are roughly the same normals. It's a little too strict with it right now. But let's set this limit to like 50 degrees. And maybe... Okay, that's doing something at least. Maybe 50 is even too low. If we set this to like 100 degrees, it won't take things that are more than like... Yeah, so that's what we want. Still going to be kind of annoying to get the right angles on these, but man, does this improve things so much already. And once this is wide enough, the problem just disappears altogether. Maybe 100 is a little too much, after all. Once this becomes large enough that the fall off doesn't impact the other side as much anymore, we can just stretch this out as much as we need to. And then we can smooth it out and do all that neat stuff, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Okay, that's definitely too zoomed out. You know, maybe this is a good time to say, hey, remesh, and we want to actually set this to like 0.6. And we want to make this entirely like less square as well. And then again, this is just for mock-up, so I don't even know why I'm putting so much time into all that shit, because what we want to do is we want to also like connect this up a little bit more to like here. Like halfway stuck in the skeleton. Pull that up a little. And then we'll put a little bit of like an extra bit of robe here, and we'll give him a hood. And those will clip through each other a little bit in the end. That will be a thing. And we're just gonna have to deal with that. That's kind of the vibes that I'm gonna go with. There's gonna be a tiny bit of clipping there, and sometimes you need to remember we're making a video game and not a Pixar movie. Is kind of my opinion on that. So yeah. That's kind of maybe I can. Maybe if I just use like snake hook to make this wider. No. Maybe if I'm like, can I just like snake hook this wider a little bit? Like, I don't think that's a great idea, but I also don't think that it's proven to be a terrible. No, that's actually a pretty terrible idea. It's giving it some like clothy texture though. Can't be all bad. It's actually pretty horrible. Never mind, that was a bad idea. Nudge. What does nudge do? Huh. Like from a geometry standpoint, it just, well, it nudges things. That makes a lot of sense. Slide relax. Just trying to figure out what everything does. That just messes up your geometry a lot. Fucking grand. Yeah, posing isn't going to do a lot here. I didn't think so. Yeah, we need to stay within like these yellow ones. Okay, so what we're learning here is that we just need the initial thing that we're snake hooking from just to be wider. That's just kind of what we're getting at. I think that's the lesson we're learning here today. But again, as a proof of concept for what we're going to be doing later, like doing this and then duplicating it, rotating it around, moving it to like this side as well, and man, that doesn't work. Well, it kind of does a little bit. And then adding like, again, very rough, like just concepting thing. Like adding a little bit here to that. Which I suppose we can, if we just remesh this now, and we just smooth the ever-living fuck out, that's like actually pretty smooth. It's a lot, like low poly, I mean, probably a lot too low poly. Just like pull this around a little bit. Man, is it? Oh, it's because I'm in Bose, fucking Bose brush. So a little something more like this probably, right? So the actual places it meets with the shoulders, it's going to be the overcloak, for lack of a better term. And then at some point the arm cloaks are just kind of clip out of it. That's the idea anyway that I have right now. I don't know. And a lot more symmetrical than it is right now. Oh my god, I keep forgetting Twitch chat is a thing. I hope that you're still here. My concept art is just a bunch of AI generated shit. I don't really have concept art because I can't draw. So this is the way I do concepting. Is I talk to ChatGPT. I say, hey, your shit sucks. Do something different. I have a bunch of images and then I just start working. Which is not a very scalable workflow, by the way. Anyway, a little something close to this. Oh, you are still here. Sorry. Yeah. I'm very bad at keeping track of two different chats. I need to get better at that. But like, only once every like 3 weeks, somebody actually shows up in Twitch chat. So I'm not very trained to look at Twitch. I'm afraid. So for now, use the clay brush in the negative direction, which is, I think, control. Yeah. Make this more hollow. Again, I'm going to eventually like redo all this cloth stuff, likely off stream. When I have like a lot more time and a lot more patience, just with like a podcast in the background or something, you know? But this is just to check out like how does this feel from like a rough perspective. And I would say so far not too bad. Probably increase the strength here a little bit and maybe remesh this thing so that it has a little bit more detail to sculpt in. Man, I thought I was like very very much pushing this in. Turns out not that much actually. So yeah, maybe this part I'll actually do in ZBrush because fucking hell. Maybe I just need dynamic topology. You know, dynamic topology. Turns out that does make this a lot easier. Starting with a better shape that's more closely like matched to this to begin with. Probably a good idea as well. Like first modeling around this in like a hollow cylinder form and then sculpting that instead of what I'm doing right now. Anyway, you get the point. Something a little like this. And then just smooth the fuck out of it. And in a very similar way, will that also add a... We can just do a UV sphere. We're going to remesh it anyway. Who cares? Okay, this one I'm actually going to go into edit mode and first... You don't actually need to do this in edit mode, do you? Still makes more sense to do that in sculpting mode. Roughly the right shape. Probably should have made sure to to symmetrize this, but I don't care. Just playing around at this point. Good enough. Kinda. Remesh, now we dynamic topology, and we just simply say outclay brush again, and we just like carve the actual skull out. Until we get to the back of the skull. Well, that went relatively well. No, I'm not going to be giving out this this model. This is specifically for my game. So I mean, it's kind of. I mean, it's a fucking improvement over whatever the fuck this was supposed to be, right? I forgot how to zoom out. Yeah, it's quite an improvement over whatever the fuck this was supposed to be. So that's, I would say that this is a win. I think that's 2.5 hours spent well. A lot of which was just like hanging out and chatting, of course. So let's keep it at that for now, and I'll probably do a lot of like the sculpting for the cloth off stream throughout the week. Maybe I'll do it on Monday. Depends on how much I feel like doing Blender stuff over the weekend. Could very well be that we make progress on this instead. You know, we could even, that would be kind of fun. We could even like make just like a couple of like strips of cloth hanging off the ribs. That could probably be like simulated fairly well as well. I do need to remind myself as well that we're going to need to retopo a lot of this at some point. Is it going to be quite a lot of work? Well, I don't think we need to retopo the spine, right? I mean, if we... This could be a lot more optimized. Yeah, but we're only ever going to spawn in one of these. It's a boss fight. It was kind of like the type of enemy that we could spawn in like 10 of at a time. Like halving the amount of vertices we use would make a significant improvement in like rendering probably. But there's only going to ever have one of them. Definitely we need to Like these arms are way too dense. Like look at the mesh. Like that's way too dense. The fingers need a lot of that detail. These arm bones don't. But I already have a low poly version of those, so we can just deal with that. For these, I think we can just kind of like decimate it and be good, to be honest with you. So we probably don't need to do a lot of manual remeshing on that. And then these we'll probably manually retopo. I mean, retopologizing is just tedious with annoying shapes. But like for things like this cloth, it's fine. Specifically also for this cloth, because it's going to have to be simulated, I can't just say, hey, fucking decimate it and call it a day, because that's going to probably be kind of weird with its sim, I think. So the way we'll probably deal with this is like this stuff. It's not even going to be very animated. Like the spine itself might animate quite a bit, but these individual segments I can't see deforming that much. So just throwing a decimate modifier on that until they're low poly will probably be